SIG-23, 6 January 2021. This is from ForwardObserver.com. Something's going on out there. America First conservatives call for a new party to replace the GOP because they're a waste of space and oxygen thieves. Notice the Electoral College certification. A host of grassroots conservatives and America First influencers pushed for a new political party following the 2020 election results and, well, today's results. The trend is gaining steam with last night's Democratic wins in Georgia, and several influential Trump supporters are calling for the abandonment of the GOP and embrace of a new America First party. Well, yeah, but you'd have to do something about all the Marxists in every level of our society and government. It doesn't matter what party you have, if the cancer is in place, the cancer is in place. You have to root the cancer out. You have to eliminate the cancer. We need a type of social, cultural, political chemotherapy. Observers note this is an emerging trend, and it's unclear how significant the pull away from the GOP will be. There's a sense that Conservative Inc. establishment control over the party has weakened, leaving some to believe, Conservative Inc., all right, leaving some to believe that they can complete the transformation of the GOP into the America First Party. You know, you need to burn the GOP to the ground because they're oxygen thieves. Look how many turned on the Republic. Still, there will absolutely be some who leave the GOP and threaten to siphon off support. I would note that although Europe is a multi-party parliamentary system, national populist movements led to the creation of several parties outside the mainstream. Great Britain's UK Independence Party, which led the successful Brexit movement, Germany's Alternative for Deutschland, and Italy's Five Star Movement are just three examples of political parties created as a response to mass immigration and globalization. The America First movement is following down the same path. The future of the now defunct, riddled with cancer, absolutely useless, tits on a board GOP could also be determined by President Trump's political future, especially if an effort to purge Trumpism, in other words, America First concept, from the GOP leads to the creation of a third party. Since 2017, the observers have written about how both the Republican and Democratic parties could fracture. The Democratic, well, they're basically just Democrat socialists. That's really all they are. I mean, call a spade, the sun's in the sky, the grass is green, the Democratic Party are Democratic socialists. That's all they are. That's all they've been leading to for about the last 50 years. At least. The Democratic Party is clearly bifurcated between the center-left neoliberals and far-left progressives and democratic socialists. How can you tell the difference? There are ongoing efforts. The progressive Republicans, you are that. You are bedfellows with the Democratic Socialists because you're progressives, because that's what progressives do. I can't remember who it was, but somebody said the progressive movement, the Progressive Party is communism without the violence. Remember that. There are ongoing efforts to shift progressive support for the Democratic Socialists of America or progressive upstart movement for a people's party. In one scenario, our two-party system could turn into three or four-party system later this decade. On the topic of third party, billionaire investor Chamath Chamath Palihapitiya, there you go, Chamath Palihapitiya, recently predicted a viable centrist third party would emerge by 2030. In any case, a third or fourth party would represent an electoral shock that could substantially increase low-intensity conflict. It's not uncommon for political parties in low-intensity conflicts to have militant wings. From our years of reporting, there's a case to be made that at least informal relationships exist between political parties and armed factions in the United States. We've seen this develop in numerous countries where the political system breaks down. From the White House, President Donald Trump signed a memorandum ordering federal officials to, if they even bother to respond, because who knows where their loyalties lie, to assess actions of Antifa activists in light of federal laws that restrict the entry of aliens associated with terrorist organizations and aliens intent on criminal activity. The order directs the Secretary of State, in consultation with the Department of Justice and Department of Homeland Security, to determine whether or not Antifa is a terrorist organization. I don't know what to say. That is probably one of the stupidest things I've read since I started doing these goddamn videos. Observer's note. It's like Black Lives Matter. There's a debate over whether anti-fascism is an idea, as it was explained last year by the FBI, or a terrorist organization. Antifa is not really an organization. There's no membership per se. They don't get membership cards, and their names aren't on rosters of members. Anti-fascists describe it as an identity. On the other hand, destruction of property and violence used towards a political objective is the definition of terrorism. I'm really fighting myself to not go into a string of invectives. And a group of individuals who carry out terrorist acts in an organized effort could be characterized as a terrorist organization. This point, however, may be moot. I would be surprised if a Biden administration looks at anti-fascism as a national security threat. Why would they? Between the FBI and the Justice Department and Antifa BLM, they pretty much have a lock on the country. Talk about brothers in arms. Low-intensity conflict in some. Far-right calls for balkanization ahead of final election results. Far-right chat room participants called for white Americans to immediately begin the move towards balkanization through non-political means. Well, that kind of asses me out. They projected that Trump supporters would realize that there is no political solution this week after Biden is confirmed as the next president and Georgia elects 2 progressive senators. Participants concluded that the only option for conservatives is to rip the Band-Aid off and immediately move towards splitting up the country. The far-right's end goal is the creation of a white ethno-state. They desire to exploit any political conflict as an opportunity to recruit disillusioned white conservatives. lacking the political party to create an ethno-state and the strength to create one by force, accelerating the country to split into smaller racially and ethnically homogeneous states is their most approachable path to achieving their goal. We already have a divide. We really don't need another one. I would be more than pleased with a divide between Americans and liberals. That would be more realistic and more practical and more reasonable. Leftist support groups provide direction and intelligence. Leftist intelligence support groups provided real-time updates on traffic conditions, personnel locations, and departure times for those traveling from various cities and into Washington, D.C. ahead of rallies today. They also directed those traveling to deliberately change lanes at close intervals to break up and slow down caravans of Trump supporters on the highways. In addition, support groups recruited bicycle scouts in D.C. to scout out areas of varying risk. Observers note the coordination of rolling blockades was a significant development over the summer and are being aided by leftist intelligence support groups. What? Local law enforcement? Trump supporters clash with police in D.C. Trump supporters clashed multiple times with law enforcement in Washington, D.C. last night when they attempted to cross police lines separating them from leftist groups at BLM Plaza. After multiple arrests, some Trump supporters warned the police that they no longer support law enforcement and that heads are going to roll. Black Lives Matter activists and anti-fascists engaged in a few smaller fights with Proud Boys and Trump supporters as well. Fences and barricades were continually brought in through the night. Observers note, last night's events indicate a growing sense of frustration amongst Trump supporters towards the GOP and even law enforcement. Can't imagine why. Given growing levels of anger, one could mildly describe it as anger, mildly, there's a risk of significant violence and possibly armed violence through tomorrow. That's all. Anti-Fablum carried that out through for the last how many months? And they're only talking about just tomorrow? No charges for officers involved in the Kenosha shooting. Kenosha County District Attorney Michael Gravely announced yesterday that no officers will be charged in the August 2020 shooting of Jacob Blake. Over 500 National Guard troops were deployed to the city with protests remaining peaceful so far. Observers note the decision in Kenosha and Kyle Rittenhouse's concurrent not guilty plea has motivated far-left groups to organize solidarity disruptions in several other cities. Portland anti-fascists carried out the first disruption last night, and others are planned this week in Atlanta, Georgia, and Seattle, Washington. It's interesting that this was announced on a Tuesday as opposed to later in the week. Yesterday's announcement may have been strategic in that election news would take precedent and drown out calls for violence. As is often the case, protests build momentum during the week and have turned violent heading into the weekend, which remains a possibility in Kenosha. Well, when you've got a good thing going, I suppose. Anti-fascists riot in Portland's North Precinct. What's new? The sun's out. In solidarity with Kenosha, approximately 50 anti-fascists threw projectiles at police officers, tore down barricades, and set fires in the street outside the North Precinct in Portland, Oregon last night. In addition, the Portland Police Bureau reported that several security cameras were destroyed. External precinct wiring was ripped out and spikes damaged their vehicle tires. Observers note, deliberate targeting of cameras and other surveillance system is a common tactic likely to be exported in future unrest around the country. Upcoming event calendar. Really don't give a flying rat's ass about today. It's 4:08 Central, 5:08 Eastern. Whatever happens, whatever's happening is happening. However, on the 10th, counter Proud Boys disruption, New York City, New York. 16 January, anti-fascist disruption, Spokane, Washington. 20 January, 46th presidential inauguration. 20 January, inauguration day disruption. 20 January, inauguration day disruption. Let's see, the first one's in Washington, the second one's in Seattle, the third one, inauguration day disruption, is in Portland. 23 January, MAGA victory parade. What are you celebrating? Anyway, so that is from FortObserver.com with an ever so slight bit of commentary. I've got others cooking that I'm going to I'm uploading now. I'm going to be uploading later something that directly relates to actual foreign influence in elections. That would be Biden, China. Yep. So with that, I guess that's it for this one. All right, 623 out.